right.
there, consider it. Just we're looking. Carolyn wants help for VP on programs. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, people.
Thank you,
And then
Marina.
Thank you.
the announcements you can see.
Yeah.
How I think
Wow.
adjourn,
All right.
leave the meeting.
Adjourned.
Okay, but stay put because hospice coming on. Oh, there she is.
Oh,
Hi,
There
Debra.
she is. Hey. Hi,
Okay.
Deborah.
So we just finished up our formal meeting, Debra, and you're on mute, but I'm gonna have you introduce yourself. You're standing in for Trisha Yamashita. Welcome.
thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Yes.
Hi.
My name is Debra Spung. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Perfect. And I serve as one of the nurse managers at Kauai Hospice. I've been with Kauai Hospice a little over 3 years now. Before that, I was actually an ER nurse down on the west side at KVMH for 7.5 years. And actually went to, I'm an older nurse. I didn't go back to nursing school until I was 42. I went to KCC, Huron Island. And this will be my 10th year as a nurse. So it took me 5 long years, but I'm thrilled to be with Kauai Hospice. So thank you guys for having us and having us be here to represent Kauai Hospice today. First, can I see maybe, I don't know how many hands I can see, but how many people have actually had experiences with either our hospice or a hospice? So I see, I don't know. Okay. So quite a few, all of you have had experience. Awesome. I hope they've been wonderful experiences. It's funny, when I came to Kauai Hospice 3 years ago, I had not had any experience with any hospice in my life. And I have to tell you, it is just, it's been such an amazing blessing and gift to work for this organization that does so much for the community. And I think there's a lot of stigma or even bad, sometimes around the word hospice, because I think people hear it and they think, oh, death, tomorrow or very soon. And that's not really what it's all about, right? We have had hospice patients on our service for 5 years. So people don't come onto hospice and die immediately, although sometimes they do, we can't control that. But I think one of the main things that we really want to do is educate the community and let people know what it is that we do, because I didn't know before I got to hospice all the things that are available. And this is all basically a free service. Not basically, it's free. It's through your Medicare Part A. So there is no fee for our service. We are a nonprofit. Anything regarding your medications or any durable medical equipment like a hospital bed or oxygen that a loved one may need, it's all included. So at no cost to the family ever. So I think that was kind of shocking for me. And I think a lot of people like to know that. So let's, I'm going to just do a little bit of talking, and then I'm definitely going to open it up for questions if that's okay with you guys. Is that okay? So let's just say what exactly is hospice, and then palliative care, because we actually do 2 different things and they're, distinctly a little bit different. So hospice care is basically care that is focused in a patient's home, wherever that home is. And on our island, we know they can be in long-term care centers. We are the only island that does not have a inpatient, well, Molokai and Lanai don't either, but inpatient hospice. So if somebody does not have a home and a caregiver in that home on our island, we're not able to provide services. So caregivers are key. Sometimes that's a misconception. People think that we are the caregivers that are going to be there around the clock taking care of the patient. And that is not so. So there actually has to be a caregiving system in the house for us to be able to provide our services. And then the other thing is that the patient, their focus and what they really want is they want to focus on quality, not quantity. A patient has to have a terminal diagnosis, or a diagnosis that 2 medical doctors believe that the patient has 6 months or less to live, and that the patient wants to spend however much time they have left having as much quality and comfort in their home as they can have. So hospice is really about quality and comfort. It's not about curative. It's not about giving up. It's actually, our shirts say, if any of you have seen them, hashtag live until you die. It really, hospice is really about living as powerfully and as pain-free as you can, whether you've got 1 day left, 1 month, 6 months, 5 years. It's really about living until you die, and living to its fullest and having as much quality time that you can with your family and your loved ones, and to find closure. And with that, we have a whole team that supports you through that. We've got a full-time medical director, Dr. Nancy Long. We have a full-time nurse practitioner. I think Francis knows who that is. It's Chelsea Demingsel, or Nani. And then all, whole staff of nurses and CNAs, those are certified nurses assistants. We have bereavement and spiritual, and we also have social workers, and we have volunteers. And this is a whole team approach. So sometimes a family, the patient might be real cruise. They might be cruising. They may not have any symptoms to manage, but maybe the rest of the family unit's falling apart around them, not able to deal with with the patient's decline or whatever's going on. So that's why we have not just nurses and doctors, we've got social workers, and we've got bereavement and spiritual, because there's so many things that family members and patients and loved ones are going through at this time. So it's not just it's a whole unit. The family, it's never just about the patient, because it's the whole family unit. As I mentioned, with hospice, you're focusing on comfort and quality, not curative. That's where our palliative program comes in. And this is the difference. And it's really the only difference. The other thing with your hospice benefit, I just want to let you guys know that once you become a hospice patient, we have what are called recertification periods. So we are always recertifying you to make sure that you're still eligible. Because sometimes people do come onto our hospice services, especially right out of a hospital admission. And especially with such things like as heart disease or kidney disease, or maybe some respiratory, some lung diseases. Sometimes they get better, like it looks like they're going to really tank. And so they come on hospice, and then they get home and they actually get better. And we do have to do a live discharge because they no longer have a terminal prognosis of 6 months or less. So that we love to do live discharges if we can. That's wonderful. But usually in like a cancer situation, we know that that's probably not going to be a discharge, unless of course the family wants to. And again, just so that we're clear, the family or the patient themselves, they can sign off of hospice anytime. So it's not once you're on, forever. If you're not happy, or you just don't want the services anymore, you can sign off at any time. There's no obligation. So our palliative program. So the hospice is quality and comfort. Palliative is you have a diagnosis, such as cancer. Most of our palliative patients are getting treatment for cancer. So you're given a diagnosis, and it can be a really bad diagnosis, but there are treatment options, and you want to pursue those treatment options. So therefore, if certain insurance companies, this is different, the money, the aspect of it is different. As far as certain insurance companies have a palliative insurance benefit. I know certain HMSA programs do, and certain UHA have, and even the VA, the veterans, have palliative programs. And so that is when somebody's going to get treatment, we can support them and help manage their symptoms to hopefully help not only keep them comfortable, but keep them from going to the hospital. Because, if you're getting chemotherapy, you might have increased pain, increased nausea, vomiting, increased constipation, whatever. So those are all symptoms that we can manage at home and hopefully prevent you from having to go to the ER for something like that. The other difference is that palliative program is only 90 days in a calendar year. So it's not kind of more endless like the hospice. The hospice doesn't run out until the patient expires or we discharge them or they revoke, they discharge themselves. So the palliative program is for 12 weeks, 90 days, basically 3 months, in a 12-month period. And it's not based on a calendar. It's like if you start July 1st, then your calendar year will be next July 1st. So you would get July, August, September, then your 90 days would be over, and then you're eligible again next July. So that's how palliative works. And sometimes in the middle, a couple things with the palliative program. If somebody's doing really, really great on that palliative program, then like if there's no symptoms to manage, rather than kind of burn through those 90 days, we might recommend like, hey, why don't we bank these days right now? Because you're doing so good right now. You know, yes, we can keep coming, but there's no symptoms to manage. And further down the road, it looks like this patient may be getting more chemo, more radiation. So why don't we bank these days? So that's an option, to bank those days. And then sometimes the patient decides in the middle of treatment, I'm done. I don't want any more treatment. Or they're just not able to tolerate the treatment, and they choose to come on to hospice services at that time. But when they are a palliative patient for those 3 months, it looks very much like a hospice patient, meaning your medications that are prescribed by our medical director that are related to your diagnosis, your palliative diagnosis, are covered by hospice, along with the durable medical equipment. Even on the palliative program, you can get medical equipment. And then you have access to the rest of the team, the volunteers, a home health aide, volunteers. Yeah. And that kind of wraps up our 2 programs. And I'm trying to think if I left any questions that come to your mind just off the top of your head right now. Yes, I think, is that Carolyn? Unmute yourself. Yeah.
I'm familiar with the first concept you have, but the palliative one, who makes the determination on choosing the palliative?
So usually what happens, and again, because there's so much coming out of oncology, a patient goes in or gets newly diagnosed, and we have a nurse navigator over at the oncology department that works with us. We work very closely with them. And so when they know that a family's going to start or a patient's going to start treatment, they make a lot of referrals. So they send us a lot of referrals. Not always is the family interested, but we then follow up on the referrals, go out to the family's homes, or sometimes our medical director and our nurse practitioner will go to the hospital, to Wilcox, and they'll do a palliative care consult. And they'll do a consultation and explain the program. And then we have to see if they do have it through either HMSA or UHA. When I first started with hospice 3 years ago, we had a grant in aid from the state of Hawaii. So we could put anybody that wanted palliative services on our service. And so when I came to hospice, we almost had as many palliative patients as we did hospice. Unfortunately, as all grants do, that money ran out and we could no longer sustain it, you know, being a small nonprofit organization. So now, it's just if you have a certain insurance, and not all insurances have this palliative program. Our medical director and our nurse practitioner can still do palliative consultations, but what that looks like is they would meet with a patient and basically based on what the patient is describing as their symptoms, because it's more the area of our expertise with our medical director and nurse practitioner to deal with these symptoms, they may make recommendations to their medical provider on this is what we would do to manage some of these symptoms. If we can't take them on as a palliative care patient, our medical director can and has and will make recommendations.
I guess the part is that they have to have this be covered by a insurance company that has that palliative.
Yeah, for palliative, absolutely. Yes. It's really a shame. I mean, you know, palliative palliative treatment and palliative support like this it's so important. I know that other insurance companies and even Medicare and Medicaid, I think they're all looking at it. I think it will probably be something in the future, but yeah, it's sad that it's not available just to anybody who qualifies. So, but it's not. And hospice is. So I told you early on that your hospice benefit is through your Medicare Part A, but if you don't have Medicare, we don't deny, and even if you don't have insurance, you may be 40 years old, right? You're not getting Medicare yet. So, but we don't ever deny anybody hospice services based on ability or inability to pay. So if they don't have insurance and they're not Medicare eligible yet, we still provide services. We never deny an eligible patient that meets criteria and has a support system. We would never deny them hospice care. Any other questions you guys can think of?
I guess I kind of have a second question.
Absolutely.
I work for a nonprofit too.
Yeah.
And you're always looking for money to, support your group or whatever it is. How does I know hospice used to rely on the fireworks, the July 4th event,
right.
a lot, but you must have other sources.
So we do, yeah, the 4th of July is one of our biggest fundraisers, and we will be doing it next year. So we're last year and this year we're not. But we also have a lot of donations, grants. Yeah. And I think other community resources that help nonprofits.
Okay.
Kind of the same way other nonprofits.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're not at a point where you're looking for more money in that sense that, I mean,
well, I can't,
organizations,
yeah, I would never say we're not looking for money. I mean, we're a nonprofit. I would never say that, but I mean, we have a really great functioning organization. So we have a really healthy organization. Tricia Yamashita has been with the organization over 10 years, and she's been the executive director for the last 3, and she is amazing. She has done miracles with this organization, and we are, stronger and thriving. Our census just keeps going up and up and up. So we're thrilled. Yeah. In fact, when I got there, the hospice census was in the high 20s, low 30s, and our census has gotten as high as 70, and we usually run a daily average census in the 50s and 60s. So it's really come a long way. So we're really proud of the work that everyone's done. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
Not a question, but this is Francis. Sorry.
Yes. Hi, Francis.
Anyway, yeah, when my mother, I guess, had entered into hospice, her doctor was less than open to that idea. Was really, not eating and everything else, but he had something kind of, I don't know, they had this adversarial relationship because she wouldn't make it into his appointments.
And Francis, are you talking about her primary care physician?
Primary care physician. Anyway, so yeah, I had requested, I guess, from mom's primary care physician, a referral to, to try and get her help from hospice.
Right.
And so I'm just sharing this story with others that I guess hospice does provide like a free assessment
absolutely.
of individuals that are kind of, you recognize some of the symptoms as a caregiver.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really great point.
So I just wanted to put it out there for others that, if you recognize that your loved one, is not getting any better and needs, and you as a caregiver needs more help, that there's a free assessment that hospice can do.
Absolutely.
For your family so that you can begin services or that they can intervene, I guess, between the primary care physician, and the patient.
Absolutely,
I just wanted
Francis.
to add that.
Yeah, no, and I thank you for that. I want to elaborate on that. That's a really important part because a lot of people are like, what, well, if I see somebody, what do I do? So let's talk about what you do. So let's say you are a caretaker or your mom or dad or cousin, auntie, somebody, and you just notice this patient, this family member, this loved one, they're declining. You know, they don't have to have a terminal illness. They could have had, wow, you know, auntie's fallen like twice in the last 3 months. She looks like she's lost weight. Her clothes are falling off her. She's not eating. And Francis is exactly right. You go to the primary care physician and you say, you know what? My auntie is not doing good. My mom, my whatever is not doing good. This is what's happened. I would like a hospice referral. And that gets the ball rolling because then that primary care physician faxes us a hospice referral. And we usually call definitely within 24 hours. We will call, you know, the person that's requesting the referral. We get a little information over the phone because, you know, again, Francis is right. A layperson doesn't know what they don't know. They just know maybe she's ready, maybe she's not. So we gather a little information over the phone, and then we absolutely love to come out to the house. You can come to the office, but we really like to go to the house so we can see the whole picture. We can see the patient in their own surroundings. How do they get around? Do they get around? And then we're able to make an assessment. This happens a lot with Alzheimer's and dementia, right? Because the caregiving with that is really, really strenuous. But that doesn't mean that the patient qualifies for hospice. So that gets really tricky because I've gotten a call before from a caregiver of an Alzheimer's patient, 2 Alzheimer's patients, sisters, very old, over 100, both of them. And the caregiver says, we need hospice. My aunties are running around the house chasing the caregivers with knives. And I said, okay, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but I can tell you right now over the phone that they're not hospice eligible because you said a few things. Running around the house, chasing the caregivers with knives. I said, they're too functional for hospice with Alzheimer's. So, but it was really good to go out and see them and get eyes on because that can go downhill really fast. So we like to go do assessments. And again, with Alzheimer's, just to give you guys an idea, because somebody can live with Alzheimer's for 10, 20 years. When it becomes, this might be hospice, obviously they become completely bedbound or chairbound. They no longer walk around. Okay, that's a huge one. They start having more falls. They start having reoccurring infections, UTIs, respiratory infections. They're losing weight. They're not eating enough to really sustain if they keep eating that way, it's very likely in 6 months, they probably would be not here. So we have a little checklist. It's very easy to look at it and even the caregiver will look at that and go, oh no, she's not there yet. Usually they're incontinent of bowel and bladder, meaning they need a diaper or Depends or something. Need heavy assistance with all their ADLs, all their activities of daily living. They need assistance with feeding. So it gets a little tricky with Alzheimer's patients sometimes. And what's really sad is a lot of Alzheimer's patients have behavioral issues. And that's when we get the call because they're like, I can't take care of my auntie anymore. And it's like, but that's not hospice yet. That's home health. That's hired private caregivers. That's placement in a long-term care facility. It doesn't mean it's hospice. But if absolutely, if you have a loved one that is declining without some major terminal illness, just they're declining, by all means, have a referral from the primary care doctor sent to our office. We will return the call. We'll go out, do an assessment, and explain our programs to them. And at that point, sometimes they are absolutely, and sometimes they're like, well, we're not quite there yet. And sometimes the families need time to pull together like a caregiving system. But, Francis brings up such a great point. You really want to start this early. So many people, interesting, sad statistic. So I've mentioned what qualifies somebody for hospice is a terminal diagnosis that there's a very high probability that a patient has 6 months or less to live. knowing that you can have all those services, nurses coming to your house, a medical director coming to your house, home health aides, all the equipment, the medicines are delivered right to your house, by the way, no more going to pharmacies. You can have all that for at least 6 months. The national average length of a hospice stay is 17 days. It's tragic. It's tragic. And that is like what I'm passionate about talking with people about hospice, because 17 days, that's not even 3 weeks. That's how close to the end of life people are before families are calling hospice, or doctors, because doctors don't go to school to learn how to let people die, do they? That's not their specialty. Most doctors go to school to figure out how to make people live. And so it's a very big difference. And so for most modern medicine doctors to even wrap their head around hospice is very hard, because it's like, but wait, I don't want to, they don't want to give up. And they even have that mentality that it's giving up, instead of, you know what? I'm doing you a disservice by keeping you going. Like, I really think that you would benefit and have so much more quality to your life if we had hospice come and explain their programs to you. Like, those are the doctors that we dream for. The ones that are, a little bit real and honest and aren't afraid. And some people are just afraid. And I think that's what hospice is about. It's kind of about normalizing a natural process of life. I mean, we were all going to die. And even though I didn't have any experience when I came to hospice, I remember in my interview saying, well, I feel like it's, if you're going to have a baby, you go to an OB and you go to birth classes and you take all these classes to prepare for a birth. So at the end of life, why aren't you doing all this education to learn what's going to happen on the other end? It really is. It's an education. And while we can't take away the pain and we can't take away the sadness, we can educate you and we can eliminate a lot of fear. And fear can be paralyzing in situations like this at the end. And that is something that can bring a lot of comfort, that we can take away a lot of the fear by, providing you with the teachings of how are you going to give this medication? How are you going to change your mom or dad in a bed? And, we're there to support you. We are 24/7, meaning our regular business hours are Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. And we have regular patient care coordinators, they're called, that are the nurses that carry a caseload and are out in the field Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. But because we are a 24/7 agency, we then have on-call nurses and our medical director and nurse practitioner that are available 24/7. So if at 2 a.m, there's a symptom, my mom's having excruciating pain, you call the nursing line, you have a nurse that answers. We immediately start giving you some interventions on the phone, and obviously go to the house if needed. Not every call requires a visit, but we certainly assess it. And if needed, we go, and it doesn't make a difference what time of the day or night. Another benefit with hospice, at the time of death, I don't know if you've ever been in a hospital when someone dies, but it's not the best, because you have time limits, you have visitation restrictions, you've got, they want to get the body to the morgue, and they have restrictions, they have policies that they have to follow. And at home, there's something so peaceful about that time, and so I think really sacred for a family, that they get to be present, as many family members as they want. And we know here that can be hundreds, all around present. And the patient, the patient's body can remain there. It really, especially if the room's cool enough, for a long time. I mean, as long as the family really needs. And we hospice, Kauai KPD, the police department, grants us, the nurses, the ability to do the pronouncement. So at the time of death, the family member, the caregiver, just calls the nursing line, and a nurse goes out. There's no sirens, no police have to come to the house. The nurse comes to the home. She does an assessment, obviously listens to the heart, looks at the eyes, and then does the pronouncement at that time. And then, you know, calls the mortuary for the family, bathes the body, whatever the family wants. Some families don't want the body touched. Others want the, you know, whatever the family's wishes are, or the more importantly, the patient's wishes were, that hopefully the family's carrying out. Kauai Hospice helps provide that at the end. And then the bereavement is provided to the family for 13 months after the patient passes away. So it's not like the patient passes away and Kauai Hospice is out of there. We're very much a presence in the family's life for the next 13 months. We do have journey through grief groups. So there are groups that our bereavement team puts together. I think it's being done Zoom right now, but hopefully sometime this year, or we get to get back in person because everything feels better in person. But that's a support group for people that just may feel they need a little extra support during this, you know, grieving process. So that's available for people. Our volunteer program, I'm not sure, I believe we have over like 75 volunteers. We have had to put them on hiatus, of course, through the whole COVID thing, but we are back up and operating with our a handful of volunteers, 10 to 12, that have gone through a COVID training, and we are pleased that we are now able to once again offer some volunteers in patients' homes that are deemed necessary. So that's wonderful to be able to get back to that.
Debra, what are some of the things your volunteers do?
So great question. I know our volunteers do massage, all sorts of body work, healing touch, Reiki. We have music volunteers. I believe there's pet volunteers, and they go to a patient's house. Let's say there's a caregiver that you know, knows that she has an appointment, you know, every Thursday, and she's got to go to Lehui, and the patient lives in Keikaha, and you know, to get to Lehui back and have her appointment, she's going to need about 4 hours. So we can put in a request to have the volunteer go sit with the patient. And they really do just that. They sit with the patient, obviously, depending on the functionality of the patient, they talk with them. They are not required to do any personal care. If the patient is ambulatory, they may stand by assist to the bathroom. They don't give medications. If medications have been left in a container, they can certainly remind the patient to take their medications. They sometimes drive our patients to appointments if needed. Yeah, that is a wonderful program. And I know that it was really missed during COVID. So we're happy to have that slowly getting its wheels churning again.
Debra, how often is volunteer training provided?
We used to do it twice a year. It was kind of like either a fall and spring, or I can't remember if it was a fall and spring or if it was a summer winter. So don't quote me on that. But I believe that that she did it twice a year. Rain is our volunteer coordinator, and I don't know if that'll change. You know, due to getting people back up and going with COVID. So, you know, the best thing to do is that if anyone is ever interested or asks about volunteering, you know, contact Kauai Hospice and ask for Rain, our volunteer coordinator. And then I think there's an application and there's an interview, and but all the volunteers I've ever talked to say it's the most rewarding volunteer thing that they've done. So again, it's not for everyone, because not everybody can handle hospice, death, end of life. Some people, it's just not, they can't handle it, and that's absolutely fine. But the people that it really feel it, you can tell the volunteers, it just really fills their soul. I mean, they have a real sense of joy knowing that they, you know, can make whatever difference for that person. And it really does take a village. It takes a village to bring someone into this world, and it takes a village to help them go out. So yeah, we like being part of that village.
Thank you, Deborah. Any other questions?
Maybe I have one more, I guess.
Sure.
You brought up the thing about somebody, say 40 years old, but if you have younger patients, like kids that have cancer, you end
Yes,
up treating them as well?
absolutely, absolutely.
Oh.
And the children, the wonderful thing about children on our service is they'll be hospice patients, but they still can seek treatment. So they will be a hospice, and that's only for pediatrics, not for adults. Remember, we talked about hospice and palliative, but thank you. That's a beautiful question. Pediatric patients 18 and younger, they will be a hospice patient on our service, but they can receive treatment for anything, any operation, chemo, whatever they need. They continue to seek treatment as long as they can or want to. And they still get all the hospice benefits, and it's never ending. So, if we take on a baby and that baby lives, 8 years, that baby would be our patient for 8 years if they wanted to continue to be our patient. But we would never discharge them as long as they were still hospice eligible. And that's the trick. We really don't ever discharge somebody. That's why we have had hospice patients that have been with us for 5 years. We call that a glacier decline because it's super, super slow, but it's a decline. But, sometimes you just have the most remarkable caregivers, that are taking care of their loved ones, turning them like little rotisserie chickens and feeding them with like bird droppers, and they'll stay alive for a long time. And so we will not discharge, as long as there has to be decline. We usually measure that when it gets to that. We usually measure, because at that point we can't get somebody on a scale. So we measure for their mid-arm circumference, because the size of their arm, that should keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. It's small, it's a little bit, but it has to keep getting smaller. So that's how, because at a certain point we can't put them on the scale. And also we expect them to be eating less and less and less and less. So any other questions? Thank you for that question. That was a really good question about pediatrics.
Deborah, do you guys also work with a nutritionist or somebody to help with the patient's diets?
Yeah, everybody, so all the nurses have a lot of knowledge, regarding that. If we need a dietitian consultant, we provide that. But usually, the nurses are so familiar with the different diseases and, what do you do for nausea? What's a good diet? So lots of recommendations always provided by the nurses, the medical director, the nurse practitioner. But if needed, we would do a consult. Yeah.
Yes. Well, as I said, I did raise my hand, and if the patient is resistant to staying with hospice, but the family definitely, wants to continue with hospice because, of what.
So that would actually depend on the patient's mental status, right? Is the patient mentally capable to make their own decisions? Are they still of sound mind, and that they actually know what they're talking about? And because if not, if it was be a dementia or Alzheimer's patient and they're like, I don't want them anymore, but the POA, who's the power of attorney, does, then the power of attorney is going to probably win that one, especially if the patient's hospice eligible and the decision making is now in the hands of the power of attorney. But if a patient's very capable of signing their own hospice election form and signing themselves off, and we can't keep somebody on hospice. It is the patient's choice to elect this hospice benefit. It's nobody else's. It's not a family member. And it can go the opposite way, right? You can have a patient that wants hospice really bad, and the rest of the family's like, oh no, you're not doing hospice, you're not dying, and that gets trickier almost, because again, the patient, when you have families at odds like that, and believe me, we have it all the time. That's why we have social workers and spiritual. it's a conflict, but again, through our team approach, through lots of education, through lots of family meetings, we just try to get all those issues resolved, you know. And sometimes family members that don't want a patient on hospice, they're just scared themselves, they don't understand. So once we go and kind of explain like this is what it's really going to look like in your house, you know, and it's a little less, again, it's scary, they're just afraid, people are afraid, they hear hospice and they're like, you know, oh my gosh, you know, they're dying. And you know, it doesn't mean that like that. So it's, and again, I appreciate you guys so much, because I hope that you've learned something, so that if you know, see somebody or know somebody that says, oh my gosh, my grandma, she's really declining, da, 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 you could say, you know what, you should take her to her primary care doctor. You might want to do a referral to hospice. Because our services are just so underused, quite honestly, really underused. It's just an extraordinary service that, and I know they're underused because we can look at the obituaries. It's like, that wasn't our patient, that wasn't our patient, that wasn't our patient. You know, we just, you know, it's such an invaluable support system at such a critical time for families. And there's not a lot, I don't know about you, if all your hospice experience was on Kauai. Does anybody want to share about your experience with Kauai Hospice, so that others can hear what it was like for you? Pros, cons, well, whatever. I would love to hear somebody that actually had a hospice experience.
This is Lori.
Hi, Lori.
I wanted to give a shout out to weekend nurse Miriam Imai.
Absolutely.
Weekday nurse Annie, and I don't know what her last name is. Sorry.
Annie Meredith Mitchell.
Okay. She has one
Yeah.
son, yeah?
She what?
She has one son.
That's
and
right.
She was grumbling at me because never had farm fair. So I went, sorry. But anyway, so I was asked to help my friend who was dying of cancer. And it was a privilege, but very sad and hard on me. My hair fell out. I had a UTI, you know, it was just challenging for me to see a friend go through it, but they were awesome. And then even one weekend, I don't know what it was. I think we were out of morphine or fentanyl patches or something. So even Trisha drove to the house to drop off. Had I known, I would have come out, but I was in the room with my friend, you know. But we called on all of our Reiki masters to give her Reiki. And what Annie would tell us was, wow, you're taking really good care of her.
That's awesome.
And Miriam guys would check the skin color.
Yeah.
And the fat, it was cancer.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that cancer eats away at the muscle and fat when it's kind of near the end. So they were watching all of that. And I was, it was really hard. And I wasn't there all the time. I just helped the husband make it through. And then dang it, the husband got cancer and died, you know. So I wasn't there for that. I just helped my girlfriend.
That's wonderful.
I was asked. But anyway, shout out to hospice.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for that story. That's beautiful. And you couldn't be right. Those weekend warrior nurses are amazing. Miriam, Toby, we have a whole bunch of them. And that is a testimony to Trisha Yamashita and what she will do. She will do it. She does it all. There's nothing she won't do, including taking out the trash. We all try to take it, but Trisha probably takes it out the most. But yeah, incredible. And that's what it takes, right? It's all of us. And we work so beautifully together to make sure that families are taken care of and supported. And it takes everyone. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I'm glad that we were able to support you. Anybody else want to share a story?
No.
So I speak from experience too, like how Lord, but I'm helping take care of my mother-in-law.
Okay.
And, I'm glad hospice is there, and it's a learning experience, I think, for anyone that,
Okay.
but they should be realize what hospice can do. And like
Right.
I said, people are not aware of the
Right.
benefits. So
Right.
I think in our group, I think we're going to share this video. So I hope a lot of people do,
Awesome.
it's a benefit, and,
It is a benefit, that you have. And it's invaluable. And we are the only hospice on the island. And yeah, it's amazing. I hope that's one of my goals. It always has been since I've been there, some more community outreach, because I'm so passionate about this work that I'm like, and when I go do admissions, I help in admissions too. And the family will be like, what does this cost? I'm like, nothing. And they're like, nothing. I'm like, no. They're like, that's incredible. I'm like, I know, isn't it incredible? And so I was told early on by Annie, when I was first starting with hospice. Annie was actually doing admissions at the time. And so we had to go down to KVMH. I was shadowing her. And at that time, I'd been an ER nurse for 7 years down there, 7.5 years. And Annie says, with the palliative program, if you have like congestive heart failure and you like go to the ER, even 2-3 times in a 6-month period, you might be eligible for the palliative program, believe it or not, because you're having like so many acute episodes regarding to your heart failure that raises a red flag for palliative care. So Annie says to me, yeah, if you have people that come into the ER, like, often, you could refer them to palliative. And I said, are you kidding me? I can think of like 80 offhand that are here 3 times a week, like, what do you mean? And like, I thought, wow, I was never provided that education down at the hospital. Well, either from hospice, but even the facility, even KVMH, like not knowing what it is that hospice does. So we're working right now on getting working with KVMH education department to get some education in services set up, because you would be making hospice referrals sometimes right from the ER. And we do get referrals from them. We do get referrals from KVMH, not really for palliative, and not as often as we should for the high acuity of sickness that I know I saw over here. So, but just continue to educate and talk and inform people on what it is, and hopefully take the word, the H word of hospice just down a notch. So when people hear it, they don't go, it'd be nice if they go hospice. Oh, that was such a wonderful, all that, that's what I'd like to see, not hospice. So, yeah. Anything else that you guys want me to go over, or any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm Annie.
Hi, Annie.
Hi. How long has palliative been offered?
What?
How long has it been since it's been offered?
So I'm not sure of the exact time, but it is relatively new in the medical field. I mean, but palliative care just means comfort. Well, like it's palliative is palliation means comfort. So the hospice is actually palliative care, right? It's comfort,
Okay.
but you are still seeking treatment. But as far as actual palliative care programs, it's a really good question. I wouldn't want you to hold me to that, but I think it's just really come to the forefront of the medical field in the last 10 years. I mean, it's really something, I mean, like, again, palliative care has been something that's been around forever. But as far as using it as another modality with like oncology and with, especially like it used to only be with like oncology patients. So it's really relatively new with like CHF, congestive heart failure, or breathing, like some people have COPD or, things like that. So that's kind of relatively new, that it's covered other disease processes other than just cancer. So, but I'm not sure exactly how long like insurance companies have been providing palliative care insurance coverage. I'm not sure on that.
Okay, what happened is my father died about 6 years ago. He was under hospice. He had um, kidney failure.
Mhm.
Just when, I mean, hospice kept coming, it was really nice, but I let my his son come over and help with take care. And they convinced him that he has to live longer for the grandchildren, etc., etc. So then,
Your son convinced him he needs to live longer?
no, well, my stepbrother.
Oh, your
Well,
stepbrother.
that was my stepson, stepfather. Yeah.
Got it.
And anyways, so when I got there, I mean, he wanted the whole treatment and everything. So I think he went under regular care after that. Is that
Or
how
he
it
could have,
worked?
or he may have done palliative care. It might have switched to palliative because it's 6 years
Oh.
ago, I believe we did. Was Juliana his nurse? Do you know?
I forget. Yeah.
So I know Juliana has been she's been, well, she's been there 20 years. And I know that Juliana, we just celebrated 20 years with one of our nurses, Juliana. And I know she and Dr. Weiner introduced palliative care years ago. And I don't know if it was like 10 years ago or 20, but she's been there 20. So it's somewhere. And so I know that we've been doing palliative care at Kauai Hospice. I'm just not sure exactly how long, but I would think it's
Okay.
been probably over 10 years.
I know, but what
Lori's shaking her
finally,
head, so
yeah,
she might know.
no, yeah, what finally happened is um the doctor prescribed that he get um that thing in his arm instead. I mean, the one they had in his chest for
Oh,
kidney.
for the fish, yeah, for dialysis.
And that brought him downhill so fast. The same weight he went up to Honolulu,
Mm.
went to ER, and they sent him home. And the next day he was dead. I found him dead. Yeah.
That's too bad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then
That's
we
one
had
of
the
those
police
situations. Yeah,
and the ambulance and everybody there. Yeah.
yeah. And it's just it's not the way you want it,
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I do want to say one thing so that I'm not misquoted on that when you just mentioned police and ambulance, because I told you that when your loved one dies on hospice, that the police and the fire do not come. I have to put one caveat in there. If a patient is admitted onto our service and they die within 24 hours of admission, when we do a death, we always call KPD to notify them of the death. They decide if they want to send out medics and and the fire. They do not always, but it's their decision. They're either going to give us a report number or they're going to say, hey, this was less than 24 hours. We need to send them out. They don't do anything. A lot of times we ask that they don't come with lights and sirens, but we can't control that. But we usually prepare families for that at admission, especially when somebody is arriving like from Oahu, going straight home with hospice and they're very critical, or coming out of the hospital. We usually let people know because we're expecting that this patient may go very fast. So we do let the family know that will happen within the first 24 hours. But after 24 hours, there is no police. So I didn't want that to happen. And then somebody say, Debra said the police don't come. Got to cover my bases. Now this has been recorded now. So anything else? Any other comments, questions, concerns?
No, just this is Lori again. So
Yeah.
it was palliative care, relatively new. I think you're right, Deborah. I think it's been in 10 years because Dr.
Okay.
Wiener and Dr. Neil Clendon and the cancer
Yes,
research
that's
doctor was
right.
the two doctors that kind of brought palliative care into hospice.
Yeah.
And I think that was a wonderful thing to do.
Yes.
The funding was the issue, but
Yeah.
you guys
Yeah.
are still doing it. So
Yep.
yay.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. And, we keep the referrals coming and hopefully, hopefully other insurance companies extend that benefit and hopefully there could be grants where we could do it again. Who knows? But it's a wonderful program. It's just, yeah, it's wonderful. Anybody else have anything? I thank you guys so much for having
you,
us
Deborah.
come on today. Yeah, thank you. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you.
So much. Okay.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you,
you.
Deborah.
Nice meeting you. Yes. Some of your
Virtually.
faces look familiar. Like
Thank
I've
you.
seen. You're very welcome. Thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to share the work that we do. And I hope that you've learned something. I hope that you go spread the word that hospice isn't scary or something to be fearful of, that it's a wonderful benefit that if it ever in question, just have people make a have the caregivers go to their primary care physician, because it does start with there. Because caregivers can call us, but we're going to say, okay, great. Now go to your primary care physician, get a referral and send it to us.
Yeah.
So we're trying to cut off one step. But thank you guys so much, and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, Deborah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
gang.
you. Thank you.
That was it. I'm gonna end the meeting for all, unless you guys want to hang. Laurie, you have anything going on? Nope.
No, I don't think so. Do
All
you
right.
want to talk? Do you want to talk story? Anybody? This is why we continue to meet, because the girls wanted to socialize.
Oh. I don't
I
know.
have a question.
Sure.
Oh yes, Annie.
Oh, about the sweetbread.
Uh-huh.
So who do they make the checks out to?
Oh, good question.
Well, see, that's what I was.
That's what
That's what I was
it has
asking,
to have it,
right?
right?
Because Susie only asked for 7. I gotta clarify that, but now we went up to 10 because we want the benefit, right? So now I gotta go back and clarify with her. But and we're gonna do the accounting of who